Thanks for joining me once again for another Pixie Talks review vlog.
Pixie Talks, reviews and vlogs at Pixie Talks. Pixie Talks, reviews and vlogs at Pixie Talks.
Woo! It's October! And you know what that means? It's time for Horror Month. Now, since earlier this year I fell absolutely in love with the Hannibal TV series, and since I actually haven't seen any of the Silence of the Lambs movies, I thought that I would dedicate this month to a look back on all of those horror classics, starting with Manhunter. Manhunter, from 1981, is based on the novel Red Dragon by Thomas Harris. Follows the story of FBI detective Will Graham as he tracks down a gruesome serial killer known to the press as the Tooth Fairy. Now, this particular film doesn't really function as a horror movie per se. It has some creepy elements to be sure, and the killer certainly employs unsettling methods, but most of the violence takes place off screen and it functions more like an episode of CSI, with the focus being on the investigative aspects rather than on the creepiness. Unsurprising then that the lead actor William Peterson would go on to be more well known for, you guessed it, CSI. Now, having seen this movie after I had seen the Hannibal TV series, there's certainly a lot that I can compare and contrast, both in the performances and in the story writing. But what was more interesting for me as a viewer was how much less involved the relationship between Hannibal Lecter and Will Graham was at this point in the story. I'm aware that a lot of the changes made in the course of the series radically altered the playing field by the time that this storyline was explored in the TV series. So it was neat to see what things were like between Will and Hannibal without that in-depth exploration prior to the Red Dragon. Now, the acting in this is certainly good, each character playing their role quite nicely. Will Graham is a dour, soft-spoken individual, and it was neat to see how Hugh Dancy's performance in Hannibal actually echoes Peterson's performance here quite a bit. There's a particularly beautiful moment in the movie that rather frankly discusses mental health, as Will has a conversation with his son about why he had to stay in the hospital psych ward. Although that conversation does take place in the series, I thought it was done a lot more pointedly here. In fact, it's pretty clear that mental health is a rather large theme in this story, and characters have very open discussions about it, whether it's about the mental state of the criminals they're trying to catch or about their own mental state in working in such a taxing field. Of course, the Hannibal TV series dealt with those themes rather heavily as well, even more so, but I feel like it's more dealt with subtly in this one. It's a little more down to earth and seems to be more about average people than about extraordinary, larger-than-life individuals. This film shines in its conversations, the acting bringing out interpersonal relationships that feel real and natural. Now, Hannibal Lecter himself, I was less a fan of in this film. I thought the portrayal was unfortunately a little on the crazed side, and although Hannibal himself certainly is far from a picture of perfect sanity, Mickelson's performance of him, as well as I understand as Hopkins, portray a rather more elegant and sophisticated outer mask to hide the psychotic underneath. There's a lack of that charm in Cox's take, which, to be fair, I might not have minded if I hadn't already had a different picture in my mind of Hannibal as a character. The only thing that I would really criticize about the film is its often unbearably slow pacing. There were many moments while I was watching this movie that I kind of felt myself dozing off. It has such wide spans of down moments that end up moving it at a bit of a crawl. But, to be perfectly honest, I do tend to like that more than the modern tendency to move in the opposite direction, so there is that. Manhunter's a great movie, and it represents its era and its genre very well. It's aged pretty darn well, all things considered, and if you're a fan of the franchise and haven't seen it yet, it's well worth watching, if only to get an alternate and earlier take on these characters. It's also a CSI-esque crime investigative drama, so if you're a fan of those, it's definitely worth giving it a watch, as it is a damn good one. And that's it for my review of 1981 Manhunter. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please do be sure to subscribe for more. You can also add me on Facebook and Twitter. And next week it will be time for me to finally watch the horror classic Silence of the Lambs. I'm a little nervous, so wish me luck. See you then. Bye!